The wind carried dust across the broken fields, moving through metal skeletons of buildings that once touched the clouds. There were no birds, no engines, no voices, only the soft hum of dying machines buried under sand. Ethan Cole walked alone through the ruins. His suit's visor flickered from the ash that still floated in the air, glowing faintly under the weak sunlight. He had been walking for 3 days since his landing pod fell near the old equator line. His mission was simple: find a working energy core from the past age and bring it back to the last human colony orbiting above the dead planet. Without that power, the station would fail within weeks, and the last humans would drift into darkness. He had seen empty cities before, but Earth looked stranger now. The colors had faded, the rivers had turned into silver lines of poison. Yet somewhere in the deep silence, Ethan still felt a heartbeat. The planet was not completely dead. He stopped near the remains of an old transport hub. Huge cables and burned trains lay twisted like snakes. He scanned the ground for energy traces. The detector gave a weak signal toward the east, and he followed it. Hours later, the wind changed. Storm was coming, thick with red dust that burned through filters. Ethan looked for shelter and found what seemed like the remains of a dome, half buried under rock. The outer door still held the symbol of the Joint Human-Varelian Alliance, faded but visible. It was strange, he thought. All their bases had been destroyed during the war. He forced the door open with his mechanical arm. The inside was dark, cold, and silent. He stepped through carefully, flashlight moving across walls covered in alien script. Then he froze. A soft sound came from the corner. A shape moved, slender, tall, and faintly glowing blue under the dust. It was a woman. Not human. Her skin had a gentle silver tone with faint blue veins like starlight under the surface. Her hair, long and white, floated lightly in the still air. Her eyes, bright violet, widened when she saw him. She looked ready to defend herself, holding a small plasma tool as a weapon. Ethan raised both hands slowly. "I'm not here to fight." She didn't lower her guard. Her voice was calm, but firm. "Humans do not come here for peace. What do you want?" He sighed. "Power source. My people are dying up there." He pointed toward the sky. "If I don't find a working core soon, we lose everything." For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the storm outside roared against the dome, and she lowered the tool slightly. "There is one," she said softly, "but it's not stable. I could kill you if you touch it." "Wife." Ethan gave a small smile. "Then it's perfect. That's all we have left, Trisk." Her expression softened just a little. "You're brave for a human," he shrugged. "Desperate is the better word." The woman studied him closely. Her translator chip flickered, but her words came clear. "I am Alira, engineer of the Varelian fleet. A ship crashed years ago. I survived because this place still breathes faint energy." Ethan blinked. A Varelian engineer, one of the enemy race his people once fought, the same race blamed for the fall of cities. Every story he'd heard painted them as cold machines in flesh, yet standing before him, Alira looked alive, tired, and strangely human. He nodded slowly. "A Cole. Maintenance Division, Orbital Colony 9. For a few minutes, silence filled the room again. The storm outside grew stronger, and the dome shook. Alira looked toward the metal door. "You should not stay out there. The air will melt your filters. Sit." Ethan hesitated, then followed her deeper into the shelter. It opened into a small chamber powered by a weak blue crystal. Around it were tools, cables, and half-assembled machines. He could tell she had been trying to repair something. She gave him a metal flask. "Water, filtered through the core's coolant line. It is clean enough." He took a sip carefully, surprised by the taste. It was pure. "Thank you." Alira sat across from him. "Humans destroyed most of the terraformer network when they fled to space," she said. "I have been trying to rebuild part of it. If we can restart one tower, the planet might heal a little." Ethan looked up. "Terraformer towers. You know how to do that?" She nodded slowly. "My ancestors helped design them before the war. Your people and mine built this world together once." That idea struck him. He had studied history, but no record spoke of peaceful collaboration. It It was always told as a story of competition and fear. Maybe the truth had been buried under lies. Alira continued, her voice gentle now. There is a fragment of a central core in this shelter, but it needs two different control signals, one human, one Varelian. It was made to be used together. Alone, I cannot start it. Ethan understood then why she hadn't left. She needed a human code to pair with hers. He leaned closer. If we fix it together, can it still work? She looked unsure, perhaps for a short time, enough to wake the dormant systems. Ethan set down his scanner. Then let's do it. Alira blinked. You would help me, even knowing what I am? He smiled faintly. You're the only one alive who knows more about saving this planet than me. I'd be stupid not to. Something in her face changed then, a mix of surprise and something like relief. She nodded. Then we worked together. The night deepened as they prepared their tools. Ethan fixed broken cables while Alira calibrated the power cell. They talked little, but each started to notice small details about the other. She worked with graceful precision, hands moving lightly as if she could feel the flow of energy. He had steady patience, repairing even the smallest parts instead of giving up. At one point, the storm caused a power surge. Sparks flew, and Ethan instinctively shielded Alira from the blast. She looked up, startled. Why did you do that? He rubbed his arm where the spark had hit. Habit. I fix machines. I don't break people. She smiled faintly for the first time. You speak like one who remembers kindness. By morning, the storm outside began to fade. Together, they had repaired the outer conduit lines, but the main reactor still needed ignition. Alira showed him the chamber where the ancient crystal sat. It was beautiful, a sphere of light pulsing slowly. Half alive. This core connects to the old terraformer system, she explained. If it restarts, it could release new air into the atmosphere. Not much, but enough to start growth again. Ethan stared at it with awe. Then we're not just saving the colony, we're saving Earth. Alira touched the sphere carefully. I do not do this for Earth alone. Varel once breathed the same air. When your people destroyed the system, my world's orbit failed. Now both of us live in ruin. Her words carried quiet pain. Ethan could feel it, the loneliness of someone who had lost everything. He placed his hand near hers on the crystal. It's not touching, but close. Then maybe we fix both our worlds together. The lights flickered as their combined energy signatures activated the system. The machine began to hum, soft at first, then stronger. Alira's eyes widened as streams of light crawled up the walls. Guess it's responding, she whispered. But suddenly, the control panel sparked again, warning of unstable pressure. Ethan quickly adjusted the valves. It's overheating. The filters are too old. Alira tried to stabilize the current, her fingers flying across the alien symbols. We must balance the signal. It needs equal strength from both sides. Tell me what to do, Ethan said firmly. She guided him through the steps, their voices mixing with the deep sound of awakening energy. The floor trembled as old circuits came alive. Finally, the hum settled into a steady rhythm. The core glowed brighter, and a soft breeze moved through the shelter-reel air, filtered and cool. Alira looked around in wonder. It works. Ethan laughed quietly, the first real laughter in months. Then maybe there's still hope? She nodded, eyes reflecting the pale light. Hope, she repeated softly, as if trying to remember the taste of the word. They stood there for a long moment, watching the light pulse gently in the center of the room. For the first time since the war, a human and a Varelian had worked side by side to bring something back to life. Outside, the storm clouds began to thin. Sunlight broke through, weak but golden, shining on the broken horizon. Ethan looked toward. Iden said, if we can restart one core, maybe we can find the others. Alira turned toward him, her voice calm but full of quiet strength. Then perhaps our worlds are not finished after all. The wind carried their words across the wasteland. Somewhere in the distance, a long-dead sensor blinked back to life. The planet listened, waiting for what would come next. Where thick gray clouds had once covered the horizon, now a faint blue shimmer appeared. Ethan stood outside the dome staring at the light. It wasn't much, but to him, It felt like the first sunrise after centuries of darkness. The air still carried dust, but his suit's filters no longer screamed warnings. Inside the shelter, Alira was examining the energy core. The soft pulse of light glowed steadier than before. "The system stabilized overnight," she said. "The core accepted our joint signal. It means the machine remembers cooperation." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then maybe the planet does too." She looked up from her tools. "It's only the beginning. If we want the atmosphere to recover, we must find the central control tower. That's where the main code lies." He tilted his head. "How far?" "About 100 kilometers north, near the edge of the fallen continent. The route passes through the old city of Solaris." Ethan glanced toward the horizon. Solaris had been one of Earth's last great capitals before the war. He had seen images of its towers taller than mountains, shining with silver light. Now it was buried in dust and ash. Alira packed several energy cells into her satchel. "The core here can run without us for a while, but the control tower cannot activate unless both signals connect again." Ethan nodded. "Then we move together." She smiled gently, a trace of warmth in her violet eyes. "Together," she repeated. They left the dome as the wind grew soft. Their journey across the wasteland began. For hours they walked through quiet plains, filled with rusted machines and skeletons of once bright cities. The sun peeked through now and then, throwing long golden light over the ruins. Alira moved gracefully, her feet barely disturbing the dust. Ethan followed behind, carrying their supplies. To pass the time, he asked, "How long were you alone down there?" She thought for a moment. "Long enough to forget the sound of another voice. Maybe 12 cycles of your planet." "Maybe more." He frowned. "That's over a decade," she nodded. "Borrelians live longer than humans, but loneliness feels the same." Ethan's voice softened. "You could have left if your ship worked." "It didn't," she said simply. "And maybe I stopped trying. The stars looked cruel after what our war did." He didn't answer right away. The wind whispered between them. Finally, he said, "Maybe this time we fix what they broke." Lyra turned to him, her expression gentle. "Maybe we will." They reached a wide valley by nightfall. The ground was cracked, and strange glowing plants grew between the stones. Alira knelt and touched one. "The air core must have reached here. These plants breathe the new oxygen." "It's working," Ethan grinned. "Then we're doing something right." They set up camp beside the ruins of a collapsed bridge. Ethan lit a small flame using his suit's heater, while Alira studied old maps on her wrist console. For a while, they worked in silence, listening to the faint hum of the wind. After dinner, Ethan looked up at the stars. "You ever wonder if someone else survived on your world?" Alira's eyes reflected the starlight. "Sometimes. But if they did, they would search for signals. I sent many. None ever came back." He lowered his head. "I know that feeling. My people stopped sending messages to Earth years ago. They said there was nothing left to hear us." She glanced at him quietly. "And yet you came back." He smiled a little. "I couldn't accept that the home of humanity was gone forever." Her expression softened. "Then maybe that's what makes humans strong. You never stop believing, even when the stars go dark." They sat together in silence after that. The night felt less cold. By morning, they reached the outer edge of Solaris. The city stretched endlessly, its towers half buried and its streets broken. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. Ethan's scanner flickered. The control tower's signal is faint, but still alive. Somewhere in the central district, as they entered the ruins, they saw shadows of the old world posters turned to ash, broken androids, frozen fountains. Alira moved carefully, her eyes scanning for traps left by old defense systems. Suddenly a distant hum echoed. Ethan froze. "You hear that?" Alira nodded. "Power lines. Something is still active here." They followed the sound and reached a tall structure shaped like a spire, leaning against a collapsed dome. Inside, glowing lines of code shimmered across the walls, insentient and alive. "This is it," she whispered. "The main control hub." Ethan looked around in awe. "It's still running after all this time?" The AI core of the terraformer was designed to survive centuries, Alira said, but no one has maintained it. I cannot predict what it has become. As if answering her words, the light suddenly brightened. A calm, mechanical voice filled the chamber. Unauthorized access detected. Identify yourselves. Ethan stepped forward. Human engineer, Ethan Cole. Authorization, Sigma 7. The voice paused. Code recognized. Human. Then it turned colder. Virelian presence detected. Species classified. Hostile. Before Ethan could respond, the floor panels shifted. Defense drones, still operational after centuries, emerged from the walls. Their red eyes glowed, weapons humming. Illyra's face turned pale. It still follows war protocols, Ethan shouted. Wait! Cancel combat mode. Override command. But the AI ignored him. Mutual cooperation? Impossible. Protocol dictates termination. The drones began to move. Alira grabbed Ethan's arm. Run. They dashed through the broken corridors as laser beams cut through the air. Ethan's visor filled with warning signs, but he didn't stop. They climbed a fallen staircase and crawled through a ventilation shaft. Sparks flew behind them as the drones fired. When they finally escaped into the open, Ethan pulled Alira behind a collapsed pillar. You okay? She nodded, breathing hard. A small scorch mark grazed her shoulder, but she ignored it. The AI thinks our species are still enemies. We must show it proof that the war is over. He shook his head.
Ow.
It's been running on corrupted data for centuries. She looked toward the tower. If we can reach its core chamber, we can rewrite its logic code. But we need to merge our energy signals again like before. Ethan glanced back at the glowing drones scanning the area. That won't be easy. Nothing worth saving ever is, she replied quietly. They moved through the ruins using underground passages, guided by the map on her wrist console. The tunnels smelled of old oil and rust. Strange glowing insects fluttered through cracks in the walls. Every sound echoed like thunder. At one point, Alira stumbled. Ethan caught her arm before she fell. Careful, she smiled faintly. Even underground, you still protect me. He helped her steady herself. You fixed the air. The least I can do is make sure you keep breathing it. When they finally reached the core chamber, it was vast and circular, filled with blue light. In the center floated a massive sphere of energy, the AI heart of the terraformer. Thousands of cables hung like vines from the ceiling, pulsing with faint light. Ethan stepped forward, awed. It's beautiful. Lyra's expression was serious. And dangerous. Once we start the reprogramming, it will fight back. He nodded. Then we don't stop until it listens. They connected their devices to the console. Elira's alien script mixed with human code across the screen. The AI's voice boomed through the chamber. Coexistence, attempt detected. Illogical. Reverting to protocol. Override that. Ethan shouted, typing fast. We're proving the logic wrong. The lights around them flickered violently. Energy surged through the cables. Alira linked her neural band to the system, her eyes glowing faint blue. It's resisting. I need your signal. Ethan pressed his hand on the console beside hers. Their combined energy pulsed into the system. Lines of code shifted, fighting against old instructions. Suddenly, the AI's tone changed. New data received. Cooperation verified. Processing. But before it finished, a surge of power hit them. The console exploded in sparks and the chamber began to collapse. Ethan grabbed Alira's hand and pulled her back. We have to go. She resisted for a moment. No. The upload isn't finished. He yelled over the noise. You'll die if we stay. She stared at the flickering core, then at him. Go, but he refused. Not leaving without you. They ran together as the floor cracked open. Behind them, the AI core flickered between blue and red light. Then everything went silent. The tremor stopped. Ethan turned around. The sphere now glowed a gentle white. The AI's voice spoke again, calm and soft. Directive updated. Restoration authorized. Cooperation acknowledged. Alira exhaled slowly. We did it. Ethan smiled, exhausted but relieved. You were right. It just needed both of us. The walls began to glow with new light, spreading outward through the tunnels. Far above, the sky over Solaris shimmered with faint green. The first signs of living air reached the surface. Alira looked at the horizon, her voice trembling with emotion. It's starting, Ethan nodded. The planet's waking up. They stood side by side among the ruins, watching beams of light spread through the broken city. For the first time, the dead world looked alive again, as the light touched their faces. Lyra whispered, "Maybe this is what peace truly looks like." Ethan glanced at her, his voice steady. "Then let's finish rebuilding it." The light from the AI core spread across the city like dawn breaking after a 1,000-year night. Ethan and Alira stood among the ruins, faces lit by the glow that rolled through the empty towers. The air no longer burned to breathe. For the first time, a faint breeze carried the scent of earth instead of ash. Ethan looked up at the sky. "It's really changing," he said softly. "I can see blue again." Alira's eyes followed the light climbing the clouds. "The AI accepted the new command," she said. "It's repairing the atmospheric processors across the planet. But the process will need more power. The central reactor must be reignited." He frowned. "That's in the polar region, right?" "Yes," she answered, checking her wrist console. "About 2,000 kilometers north. Without it, the system will fail in a few weeks." Ethan took a deep breath. "Then we go there." Alira hesitated. "It's a long journey, and the reactor is guarded by ancient machines. They were made to keep everyone away from us." He smiled faintly. "We've already survived drones, storms, and each other. We can handle this." Her expression softened. "You humans never stop believing." "Someone has to," he replied. They spent 2 days gathering supplies from the city-old rations, fuel cells, and a working transport crawler hidden under debris. Ethan repaired the engine while Alira stabilized its alien control system. When the machine finally started, its hum echoed like music through the ruins. As they drove across the wasteland, the land slowly began to change. Patches of green moss appeared on stones, and small pools of water reflected the weak sunlight. Ethan watched them in wonder. "Look at that. The planet's already healing." Alira smiled. "The terraformer network is awakening. Life remembers its path." Now, during the long hours of travel, they shared stories. Ethan told her about growing up in the orbital colony, how people lived in narrow, metal corridors and dreamed of seeing the ground again. Alira told him about Virel before its foliations of silver light, floating gardens and cities that sang through the wind. Sometimes they laughed at how different their worlds were. Sometimes they grew quiet, remembering what was lost. Yet every mile they traveled felt like another thread of trust between them. After a week, they reached the border of the northern region. The air was colder, the sky darker. Strange lights flickered above the horizon, the remains of the magnetic storms that once destroyed satellites. In the distance, a mountain of black crystal rose into the sky. At its peak, a column of faint light marked their destination. "The polar reactor," Alira whispered. "It's still alive." They parked the crawler near the base and continued on foot. The path was steep and filled with broken machinery, half buried in ice. As they climbed higher, Ethan's visor detected movement ahead. "Something's here," he said quietly. Alira scanned the area. Old defense drones. They're still active. From behind the rocks, mechanical figures emerged, tall, silent, and shaped like human shadows. Their bodies glowed faint red under the snow. Ethan pulled out a small EMP device from his belt. "If we can disable them," but Alira stopped him. "No." The AI updated its code. "They might listen." She stepped forward, raising her hand. "Unit command, identify." The drones paused. One stepped closer, scanning her with a blue beam. "Virelian signature detected. Human presence confirmed. Cooperation signal verified. Access granted." Ethan exhaled in relief. Guess it worked. The drones turned and cleared a path toward the entrance. Inside the mountain, the air was warm and filled with light. Streams of energy flowed along glass corridors. It felt like walking through the heart of a sleeping giant. Alira looked around in awe. This place is older than both our world's wars. It was built to protect the seed of life itself. At the end of the corridor stood a massive chamber with a sphere of blue-white light hovering in the center. Dozens of pillars surrounded it, humming quietly. "That's the reactor," Ethan said. "How do we start it?" "It requires synchronization," she explained. 2 biosignatures, again 1 human, 1 Varelian. But this time, the power output will be 100 times greater. If we fail, it could destroy everything. Ethan looked at her with steady eyes. "Then we won't fail," she smiled softly, though her hands trembled. "You speak with such faith. I wish my people had believed like that." He stepped closer. Maybe they just needed a reminder. Together they approached the core. The console awakened as they placed their hands on it. Lines of light spread across the floor, connecting their positions. The reactor's deep voice filled the room, calm, ancient, and powerful. Synchronization required. Warning: planetary systems unstable. Confirm initiation. Ethan glanced at Alira. "Ready." She nodded. "Begin." They confirmed the command. Energy flared around them, forming rings of light. The temperature rose, and the floor shook. The system demanded perfect harmony between their signals. Alira closed her eyes, focusing on the alien codes streaming through her neural link. Ethan stabilized the human side, adjusting power flow with quick hands. The light brightened until it felt like standing inside a star. "Balance it," Alira shouted. "The frequencies are slipping." "I'm trying," Ethan replied, sweat rolling down his face inside the helmet. The console screamed warnings. For a moment, the energy threatened to spiral out of control. Then Alira reached out, placing her hand over his. Their signals merged against 2 different rhythms, forming one perfect pulse. The system responded instantly. The reactor roared to life. A wave of blue light burst upward through the mountain and into the sky. Outside, beams of energy spread across continents, linking to the old terraforming towers. The planet's crust shook as the ancient network came alive. Ethan and Alira stood together as the core stabilized, his voice now calm. Reactivation complete. Restoration in progress. Atmospheric balance. Recovering. They both sank to their knees, exhausted but alive. Ethan looked up at the glowing sphere. "We did it," Alira smiled weakly. "No, Ethan, we didn't just fix machines. We reminded them what unity means." Outside, the world began to change faster. Snow melted from the ground, revealing green sprouts underneath. Rivers began to flow again, reflecting the new blue sky. From orbit, the human colony saw signals spreading across the planet, signs of breathable air. Back in the reactor chamber, Ethan's communicator crackled for the first time in years. "Colony 9 to ground team, Ethan. Do you read us? We're detecting full planetary restoration signals." He laughed, overwhelmed. "It's true. We made it." Alira listened quietly, a soft smile forming. "Your people will return home," he looked at her. "Not just mine. Yours too." She hesitated. "There may not be anyone left of my kind." Ethan shook his head. "Then we start again. Together." Tears shimmered in her violet eyes, though she didn't let them fall. "You speak as if rebuilding is easy," he grinned. "It's not, but neither was surviving." Over the next days, they guided the drones to restore the power grid and activate environmental towers. Plants grew faster under the new air, and small creatures emerged from the soil. Every hour, the world became brighter, younger, more alive. One evening, as the sun set in golden light, Alira stood on a cliff overlooking the green valley below. Ethan walked up beside her. She said quietly, "Varel's sky looked like this once. I never thought I'd see it again." He looked at her, the wind lifting her silver hair. "Now you have a second home." She turned to him, smiling gently. "And you, a new beginning." For a long moment, they watched the light spread across the land, forests forming, rivers shining, clouds moving gently like breath. Suddenly, the communicator buzzed again. "Colony 9 to surface Earth's atmosphere is fully stable. Landing protocols beginning. Humanity is coming home." Ethan's eyes filled with emotion. "They're really coming back." Alira looked toward the sky where faint streaks of light appeared, ships descending through the blue. "Will they accept me?" she asked softly. He turned to her. "They'll see what I see, someone who saved their world." She laughed quietly, the sound soft like music. Then perhaps peace has finally learned how to speak. As the ships touched down in the distance, Ethan and Alira walked together through the reborn valley. Flowers grew where their footsteps fell. He looked at her and said, "When they ask how this happened, what should we tell them?" Alira thought for a moment and smiled. "Tell them that a human and a Varelian remembered what it means to rebuild life." The wind carried her words across the green hills and into the sky. Above them, the world that once slept began to sing a Ganeshion's forming. Air glowing, mountains shining with new life, humanity returned to its home, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. And beside them stood the last daughter of Virel, who had taught them that survival meant more than living knit, meant forgiving. As evening came, Ethan and Alira stood together beneath the clear blue sky. The light touched their faces, warm and gentle. For the first time in centuries, Earth was alive, Alira whispered. The stars look kind again. Ethan smiled. "That's because we finally deserve them." And as night fell, the planet that once died breathed again, born by the hands of two souls who refused.